One of the things that often precedes a case of black-on-white robbery and violence on the street is the black person will ask you for a nickel, a dollar, a cigarette, or even a cell phone. And what is happening here is they don't need a nickel, they don't need a cigarette, and they already have a cell phone. So what is happening here is you are being sized up. They decide to rob you and assault you, mostly assault you. You just want to see how much trouble it's going to be. Well, after watching these videos, I can see why people do that and what happens when you don't.
And I want to know what happened.
Now at 11, a mother on a mission. She is grief-stricken and demanding answers after an off-duty federal officer opens fire, leaving her teen son dead. Arcadia police say it was a robbery that turned deadly.
It's a story we first brought you as breaking news last night. NBC4's Rick Montanez live right now in the neighborhood where he's getting new details from witnesses and the boy's mother as well. Good evening, Rick.
McCullough, Kathy, tonight neighbors here in Arcadia still wondering how three teenagers could rob someone at gunpoint. The 15-year-old shot and killed as a result of last night's incident is Darius Smith. Tonight his mom tells me she does not believe the deputy's report that her son was the gunman. Tonight, investigators returned to First in Colorado in Arcadia, the scene of a robbery turned deadly shooting. Deputies say the gun, a service weapon fired by an off-duty customs officer in self-defense.
You could have shot up in the air and scared them boys. They was only boys.
Rashana Myrick says the 15-year-old killed in the officer-involved shooting is her son, Darius Smith.
The story you saying ain't the truth. And the crazy part about it is they let you walk on. My baby not walking on no more.
The LA County Sheriff's Department says the victim, an unidentified customs officer, was walking on First when the armed teens tried to rob him. They say he was struck several times in the head, leaving him bruised. The victim pulled his gun and shot at the boys.
I said, pop, three on a row, you know.
Guadalupe Perez heard the loud shots as she sat for dinner Friday. Detectives say Smith and a 14-year-old boy were both struck by gunfire. Smith died early this morning. Another 14-year-old ran from the scene uninjured. He was arrested soon after on robbery charges.
I feel like they're hiding something, and I want to know what happened to my baby.
Myrick says she's waiting for answers from detectives and refuses to believe her son was armed or even involved in a robbery. Deputies say they found the 15-year-old's gun at the scene.
It's a shame that people so young, you know, they're doing wrong things.
The other boy that was shot, the 14-year-old, he is expected to survive his injuries and we're told will be booked in a juvenile hall as soon as he's released from the hospital.
Just within about the last 10 minutes, Woodruff and Grove, portions of those streets, reopening tonight after police investigated an incident that involved 3 unmarked cop cars, 2 suspect cars, a crash, and gunfire. The suspect's car, a crumpled wreck. Police say the passengers were under surveillance for gang-related activity when someone inside opened fire on a van being used by undercover police. They apparently didn't know these other 2 vehicles were also police, who returned fire, striking one suspect and sending the car careening into the utility pole.
When you think about this, it was not even 11 o'clock in the morning, just a brazen disregard for human life. Whether they knew they were police officers or not.
Shell casings were found on both sides of the street and in the grass, and police say a gun was recovered from the car. A 5th suspect was arrested in another car a block away. Police used dogs to help find any trace of a 6th suspect who got away. Residents told us the neighborhood is going downhill.
It's horrible now. It's unsafe. I feel really uncomfortable just even walking around.
We're always having gang activity, drug activity is always big scenes of violence. In all honesty, it's just the newest topic of the week.
How are you feeling?
Nervous. I don't want my child to get stuck in something like that.
We begin with this new video just into our newsroom. Looking for a man who got away in a robbery where a 2nd suspect was shot. Take a look. You see that man making a mad dash out of that business and then taking off in this black car you see here. This happened at Grand Prix at Rainbow in Vegas. The clerk shot one of the suspects who has been identified. This is Kyle Johnson. He's now being treated at the hospital and is facing several felony charges.
Armed gunmen in an apparent robbery attempt, and they discharged their firearms at this afternoon on Baltimore Street. ATF was conducting an undercover operation 3 ATF agents inside of a pickup truck conducting an undercover operation were approached by 2 armed gunmen in an apparent robbery attempt, and they discharged their firearms at the suspects. One of the gunmen was apprehended on the scene. Recovered from that gunman was a 8-inch barrel 44 Magnum Taurus revolver. It is the Dirty Harry gun. The gunman it was recovered from was shot non-fatally, and he is in surgery, I believe, at a local hospital. There is an outstanding gunman. We are working with our partners from ATF to identify him and find him and arrest him.
No, I've never been walking down the street and come across somebody where the first thing in my mind was, yeah, you know what, I think I'd like to beat the hell out of that person just for the hell of it, and maybe go through their pockets when I'm done having a little bit of that kind of fun with them. But even so, in theory, I can tell you that it's probably a pretty good idea to either do the, hey man, do you have a cigarette kind of thing, or I guess at some point we're just going to have to start assuming these harmless looking white guys that are walking down the street just might be carrying a gun. So you probably should stick to people like this.
Hit him hard, hit him hard.